Our next two guests come from a country that has become a poster child for the digital economy. Estonia began building its digital society through an e-governance system to provide public services online in 1997. Today, 99% of the public services are available to citizens as e-services. So virtually all state-related operations can be carried out digitally. Filing a tax return takes less than 5 minutes, public voting occurs online, and all citizens have electronic medical records. Companies are easily established online and documents can be signed digitally. It's my pleasure to be joined by Taavet Hinrikus. Taavet was the first employee of Skype, which I'm sure we're all been using over the past few months. He then co-founded TransferWise, which has very recently rebranded as Wise, one of the first fintech unicorns which simplifies cross-border money transfers. He's also just founded a health tech startup, which is announced this week, which I think is very interesting from a trust perspective. Taavet's going to be in conversation with former Prime Minister of Estonia, Mr. Taavi Roivas, who is currently involved in the making of autonomous buses, another trust factor there. Both Taavet and Taavi have had to address the same challenge, how to design digital services that people will actually trust and use them on a daily basis. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really glad to be joined by an old friend, Taavi, ex-Prime Minister of Estonia. So let's kind of dive in. We're living in very interesting times where I think thanks to the pandemic, we have finally moved to a digital first world, a change which has been a long time in the making. So in this world, trust takes a new dimension. So let's start by discussing how do you gain and keep people's trust. And we have two different perspectives to share. So I can share it mostly from TransferWise point of view, where we grew a business online that deals with people's money from 0 to 10 million customers. And then Taavi can share the perspective of how do you get people to trust a new country, basically, given that we've regained independence relatively recently in the grand scale of time. So when I think about TransferWise, the question really was, when we launched in 2011, we just appeared on the internet, and it could have been a page built by a man and a dog, so nobody had any idea of how do you trust this? Why would you ever trust this new website with your money and do it with thousands of pounds or euros at a time? So we felt trust being a very important part of our existence, and thought hard about how do we gain it. And the two things we started with was simple. One was get other people to talk about you, which specifically meant media. So if I go around saying, please trust me, doesn't go that well, I think. But if we get the BBC writing that there's this new company, then we can borrow quite a bit of trust from the media. So I spent a lot of time talking to the media and talking to them about the problem we're solving and why TransferWise needs to exist. And then the other thing we realized very quickly was we can actually get trust from our customers. So getting our customers to talk about TransferWise, leave positive reviews, act on social media, acts as a huge boost of trust. If you have your friend telling that, hey, I use TransferWise and I got my money in 10 seconds, that's a very powerful endorsement. And a friend saying this works is probably the best thing you can get to gaining trust. But let's ask Taavi, how did you think about this with Estonia, with a country in mind?
Well, good afternoon, and I think there are actually a lot of similarities because when I think about why I use TransferWise is because it's actually so much better than the alternatives. And okay, I knew you already before starting using TransferWise, but and then that of course is a matter why I would have trusted it anyways. But also I think that that being so much better in what you do is something that gets people to change how they behave and what kind of channel they trust. But of course, if we think about getting from cash society to internet transactions, it has been taking a lot of time, and government services are also very difficult to get moving. But once you introduce government services, you need to make sure that this is the most convenient way for people to interact with the government. Of course, right now, cases in the world, including Estonia, it is rather difficult to physically meet civil servants. So, in a way, there is a need to provide online services for all kinds of interactions with government or municipality or whatever it is. And I think, to be very honest, in Estonia, one big advantage was that we started very early, and people didn't yet have the concerns that are there right now, like privacy issues, let's say safety questions. Internet was so new still 20 years ago that people kind of, I would say, I think they trusted it a bit more than now. Than they are much more informed about the concerns. But then again, in Estonia, how we have built the system is always being very open about it, and telling that we don't gather any more information about you as any other government would, and then just the means of keeping it digitally doesn't mean that we invade your privacy more than any other government. So. And I don't know, you as a person who has lived in many countries of the world, you can certainly comment whether it is actually easier to get public services in Estonia or not. I mean, I have only lived in Estonia, but you certainly know much better what the alternatives are.
No, and I think when it comes to how the state interacts with its citizens, Estonia is by far most advanced from the countries I've lived in. I've lived in Estonia, Singapore, Switzerland, UK. So I think the smoothness of how things work in Estonia is astonishing, and I think just seeing it work gives people a lot more trust in it. Like, I think kind of following up what Rachel was talking before, like an example of contactless payments. At first it feels really weird, like there is no authentication, why should I trust it? But once you use it, once you tap it, it's like there's no going back, because you just see that it works so much better in such a seamless way. But let's try to zoom out from here. Like, how do we, like, from a country point of view, like how to get people from outside Estonia to trust Estonia as a country? So, like, how did you think about it from a kind of government point of view? Like, especially if we go a long time back when Estonia just regained independence, and it's been a journey of going from an ex-Soviet Eastern European republic to now being one of the most digital economies in the world.
Yes, that's a very good question, because let's be honest, there are lots of preconceptions or biases as Estonia was occupied by the Soviet Union. Some people think that we were all communists here, which is certainly not the case, and very far from it, actually. And Estonia has been able to brand itself as a country whom you can trust, I believe. One of the things, of course, is experience. I mean, if Estonia acts like a country that is trustworthy, being a partner in EU, a reliable partner, being a reliable partner and contributing partner in NATO, contributing the 2% or more that we have mutually agreed on, then with this brick by brick built reputation, countries can play some trust in us. And what comes to the digital part, I think Estonia is one of the not very many countries in the world that only has 1.3 million people, but that can claim to be globally known for something and being very good in this something. And this is digital government services that I think are much easier and much better to use than those that that you get when meeting physically in some government office.
I mean, also with TransferWise, I can say in the beginning we were making big use of Estonia, saying that, hey, TransferWise is coming from Estonia. The country that is very digital, has brought you Skype and so on. So I think that reputation was Estonia had established that clearly even before TransferWise got started. But kind of moving on from here to building digital services, and kind of like how do you design the experiences in a digital world so that people will trust them? From TransferWise point of view, kind of again, like I'm not sure that people really care about the fact that something is digital or not. People care about it being better. So it's a question of designing experiences which are digital by nature and 10 times better than the old world equivalent. In case of TransferWise, it really goes back to the basics of cheaper, faster, better. You get a service which is instead of taking days, instantaneous, so you can say it's 10 times faster. We were 10 times cheaper. And just overall the ease of use, instead of going to a bank branch, you can go to the only bank branch that matters, which is your smartphone. So I think that was kind of like a very, very seamless. And once we got people over the barrier of trying it for the first time, there was really no going back. So what do we, if we think about building Estonian digital services, which other principles can you recall that were used?
I do believe that the digital services are also 10 times better than the conventional ones, and especially they consume 10 times less of your time. I still remember my very first tax declaration. I filed in at the change of century around 21 years ago, and that was on paper. I had to write down all my incomes. I had to write down all the information that the government asked about me. And now, as it was said already in our introduction, everything is pre-filled. Everything is digital, and it doesn't take me more than 2 minutes to declare my taxes. And I cannot imagine any other way of doing it. And as you well know, in Estonia, people are demanding for more digital services, mainly because these are more convenient. If there is something that you cannot do digitally, whatever it is, it may be related to government services or anything else, then people say, come on, we are supposed to be e-Estonia. We need to use it, or we need to have digital services. And also, of course, one thing that is objectively better, in my opinion, in our digital ID and digital signature is that it is objectively more secure. Because if we compare to the alternative, the signature that is handwritten, it's insanely unsafe. And I simply don't understand how people everywhere in the world still trust a scribble on a paper instead of having some digital alternative. And the same is, of course, with having cash in your pocket, which can easily disappear, versus having payments with your smartphone that actually has quite good safety in terms of password or biometry to safeguard your assets there.
I mean, I can vouch from personal experience. We kind of made use of the pandemic and moved to Estonia for one school year, and I have not I haven't had a single physical interaction with any country official. I've been able to do everything online that was needed to move back to Estonia for a year, and it's been a very smooth experience. Can you do a quick pitch or introduction about Estonian electronic ID card and everything that this powers? Because I do believe that there are people here that don't actually know what this means and how it is 10 times better than the alternatives.
Yeah, gladly. I mean, ID card, I'm not the personally fan of anymore, as it still uses the smart card that you need to plug into your computer. I use a lot of like smartphone or iPad that doesn't have the smart card reader, and my personal favorite is the mobile ID, which is basically a combination of your SIM card with special functionality on it, plus a PIN code that together creates a two-factor safe like login. Let's put it this way, or stamp that we can compare to the signature. And basically, what it gives is just like the app of TransferWise or any bank that you use gives you access to your wallet. Our digital identity, which is very, very safe, gives the access, remote access over internet to your identity, and you can also use it for confirmation or signing any file. I think personally that the technical part of it, people just need to understand this much, that it is safer than a handwritten signature, and from a user experience part, logging into any website to do the transactions just needs to be so much more intuitive and easier and less time consuming than just meeting some civil servant. And I'm happy to hear that your coming back to live to Estonia has been seamless experience, and this is exactly what we have been trying to achieve. One of the aspects is also how the services are designed. For example, if a government has asked you once what is your street address, the other parts of government, if they have the legal means or legal permission to access your address and to know where you live, then they should ask the registry what that you have already informed, not you again. So, I mean, the principle is called once only, and the point is to make your life easier, not to ask you the things that the government side already knows. And again, if we can provide this to be a seamless user experience, I hope there is no going back, and I hope that other countries, some of you that you mentioned, are still using utility bills to identify people. That if they hear about our way of doing, they will follow our example. I don't know how close do you think the countries are, or what? Do you have a understanding why? For example, UK or Singapore, that are both extremely advanced countries in many aspects, why they don't use digital ID? That's a mystery to me, at least.
I mean, I'm still puzzled that every month I need to send a utility bill somewhere to prove my address, because I do deal with many other countries, and it's unfortunately the Estonian ID card doesn't reach that. So I think we need to keep on preaching how to build technical infrastructure and so legislative infrastructure to allow for a better world to happen. I mean, it's puzzling to me how someone can still think that his scribble on a piece of paper brings trust to anyone. Back in the days when we didn't have copying machines and scanners and printers, it may have been the case, but for a long time that shouldn't be taken as a sign of trust, at least in my mind. What about some of the stumbling blocks that one can have? What's the way to think about inclusiveness? It's very easy to create the multi-tier world this way, I'm afraid. You must have some examples and stories to share about how to think of this.
Well, in a way, of course, there are some reasons why people don't use digital services. But I think in today's world, it is much easier than it was 20 years ago when Estonia started with digital services. There is hardly a place or that has many people and doesn't have a good internet connection, and that's the state in most of the world countries this way. So the first precondition of having good internet condition is almost everywhere. Second precondition, of course, is the ease of use, and to that I think the smartphone introduction has contributed perhaps more than any government, because using a smartphone is much easier for many people, children and elderly alike. My grandfather, who, for example, who is 85, he has never properly used a PC because he thinks it's too complicated, but he is very savvy in using the smartphone version of e-government, and he's happy to do that. So I think much of the digital divide is becoming a myth because of the world changing, and secondly, we still have alternative for those who, for some reason, don't use any computing device. But it's getting smaller and smaller. And can you imagine? Still 11 years ago or 12 years ago, we still had in Estonia a service that pension could be delivered to your home physically as a pile of money. Today, we kind of laugh if we think about this kind of version of using the money actually existed. And I don't know whether we will reach cashless society soon, but it would be logical to me that cash should not be needed in near future. I don't know, you of course have much better experience in that, but we have placed trust in paying with our phone or watch or bank card.
I mean, to me, it feels that cash is so much less trustworthy in so many ways. It's so much easier to counterfeit, and you can lose it and people can take it away from you. So everything digital seems to be winning. So I think we have maybe time for one last point. So maybe I'm going to ask you, I'll share a trust hack that we use at TransferWise, and if you have a trust hack to share as well. So at TransferWise, in the beginning, where we were trying to establish ourselves as a trustworthy solution. So we did many tests. In the digital world, everyone knows how you keep on relentlessly testing if a product is better or not. And in the beginning, most of these tests didn't really have a meaningful result. Maybe we changed something and it became 0.1% better. So there was one test we did which had a 10% improvement. So to increase trust, we at one point put the Skype logo, because I had worked at Skype, and the PayPal logo, because Max Levchin, who was a founder of PayPal, invested in TransferWise. We put these two logos on the TransferWise homepage, and that had a huge improvement visible immediately. So I call that a trust hack. How do we borrow trust from other people? Do you have a trust hack to share to leave with us, Taavi?
Well, one thing that comes to my mind is when we introduced e-voting, internet voting. Voting is a thing where nobody should know. At least in Estonia, the system is this way, that nobody should know who you vote for. It's very private. It's only you can know, and if you wish to share it, it's of course different. Now, how to address that with internet voting? How to make sure that nobody is watching behind your shoulder, for example, or influencing the way you vote? So the simple thing that we designed was basically that to prevent somebody from influencing your vote or seeing behind your shoulder, you can just re-vote however many times you want, and only the last vote counts. So we basically made cheating or influencing you pointless, and I think this qualifies as a trust hack as well. So people, I would say, since the beginning have placed high trust also in internet voting, and of course it's much more convenient than the conventional way.
Incredibly clever. Thank you, Taavi, and I'll pass it back to Greg.
Thank you, Taavet.
Thank you, Taavet. Thank you, Taavi. Absolutely fascinating discussion. I think as countries all over the world begin to think about building back better after the pandemic, we should all be looking towards the Estonian model for digital governance, because you guys have clearly got so much to teach all of us. So thank you so much, and look forward to you joining us later.